Hey, welcome to the Elle Russ Show, where we explore ways to get healthy, wealthy, and wise. With a combination of guest interviews and solo episodes, I hope you will be inspired and motivated to become the best of whatever you are. I'm Elle Russ, #1 best-selling author and subject expert with over a decade of helping thousands of people across the globe. Visit my website, elleruss.com, to learn more about free guides, masterclasses, online courses, and more. Enjoy the show. All right. So, by the way, you might not want young children listening to this because in it, I'm going to give a real harsh example of something that happened in my life that may not be appropriate for the kiddos. Today, I'm going to talk about the other side of gratitude, which is the mercies. And I'll explain that in a second. But first, I want to go through a nice, quick old fable. All right. So there's this old fable about a weary traveler who discovers the secret to happiness in a small, unassuming stone. The story is that he had been journeying for days with little to his name, and he was really down. And so in a small village, he encountered an elderly woman who noticed despair in his eyes. And she handed him a plain, smooth stone and said, "This is a thankful stone. It might seem ordinary, but it holds the key to contentment. Whenever you feel lost or happy, hold the stone and think of something you are grateful for." Skeptical but intrigued, the traveler took the stone and he went on his journey. As days passed, he found himself in challenging situations, from harsh weather to scarce food. Each time he remembered the thankful stone, he would hold it tightly and he would think of something that he could be grateful for, whether it was the warmth of the sun, the kindness of strangers, or simply the breath in his body. To his surprise, each moment of gratitude seemed to lighten his load. It brought a spark of joy into his hardships, and so the more he practiced gratitude, the more abundance he noticed around him, not necessarily in wealth or possessions, but in moments of beauty, kindness, and strength. That is a lovely, lovely fable. And yes, we should ponder the wonderful things we already have, the wonderful things that have already happened to us. I want to scan the other side, the dark side, all of the mercies that we forget. For example, that one time I accidentally almost literally cut my wrists open from hopping over a fence, but I didn't. Oof. That one time I survived a really bad staph infection because I had an ingrown hair from shaving on my leg that became an infected boil, and I was in the hospital. Could have died if I didn't get there in time. What a mercy. And now I'm going to tell you about the craziest mercy of probably my entire life, which is the time I was almost child sex trafficked as an 11-year-old. Oops. Luckily, I was completely untouched. I was unscathed. The big reason in hindsight is because my gut instincts led me to speak up. My father got the police involved, and they busted one of the biggest child pornography rings in downtown Chicago. I like to believe that I was meant to be recruited into that so I could shut that shit down. My speaking up about something not being right about this person led everyone to put the perpetrators in prison. Seriously, though, stop for a second. I could have been sex trafficked. What if I hadn't spoken up? What if I had ignored my gut instincts? I was 11. I wanted to be in an MTV music video like I was fucking promised, okay? Right? I wasn't a mindset master. I could have easily become a victim, but I didn't. I was spared entirely. What a mercy. The other girls before I showed up were not so fortunate. They were drugged, they were assaulted and filmed, and probably worse. This all, by the way, was prior to internet, prior to cell phones too. This is old school VHS tape child sex trafficking shit. How quickly the deep gratitude for these types of near misses in our lives just fades away. Don't let it happen. Never forget. Look, I'm not suggesting that you haphazardly relive traumatic experiences so that you can be grateful, okay? And if you have deep trauma, please work with a professional on that. But I think you get me though, right? Sometimes when we're struggling with feeling happy and grateful, going to some of our past mercies can quickly generate that gratitude right back up. Because I'll tell you what, every single time I see a headline on TV or the internet about children being trafficked, I never forget. In fact, whatever first class problem I might have been frustrated about 5 minutes prior to being reminded of that mercy suddenly disappears. My whole day changes. That creepy ass, scary mercy is the gift in my life that keeps on giving. Think about some of those mercies today. And even if you haven't been through really tough things in life, there have probably been some mercies scattered throughout your life as well. Remember them. I'm not saying every day relive all of the bad things that almost happened to you, put you in a state, but it's almost like this. It's like I have a hand disability. I go through some flare-ups sometimes where it's really rough. Years and years ago, I was driving in Los Angeles. I was having a hand flare-up and I was having a pity party for myself in the car. I started to cry. Why me? Why did this happen to me? Why are my hands fucked up? And literally, as I was having this pity party, I took a left turn and I looked to my right, and there's a one-armed guy outside of a Starbucks having a coffee. And you know what my thought is at that moment? At least I have my arms. Again, I'm not saying playing the game of someone has it worse than you is always the move, but sometimes it is. And sometimes going back to the things that almost happened but didn't are worth taking a moment to go, oh my God, thank God. Like, like I want to cry right now because if you're out there and you were sex trafficked, I'm horrified for you. I also am horrified thinking about the life and the challenges I would have had if I was sex trafficked. Okay. Now, granted, there's probably hundreds of people who've been sex trafficked and they're totally adjusted, wonderful, happy human beings. I'm not saying you can't have major trauma, but I also know the kind of stuff I would have had to go through with that. Now, I might have had other kind of traumas, other kind of challenges. That's one I didn't have, was a sexual assault, a drugging, a rape. If that's you, then hey, that's the trauma work you've got to do if you haven't done it already. Hopefully you have. And if not, please get into that. What are some of the mercies? And it don't have to be life-threatening mercies. It could have been, oh my God, I almost chose that school, and thank God I didn't because that friend told me I'd hate it because they went there and I ended up at the college where I met the love of my life, right? Like it could, any kind of mercy, any kind of near miss on anything, a situation, a physical situation. Like I've never broken anything, but I've kind of almost. I'm grateful for those moments. And not that we can remember every single time we tripped and didn't break our face off, right? Like, I'm not saying to try to really conjure up, but there might be some obvious ones to you. Is there, if you're triggered, so like, for example, I'm not necessarily triggered, but I am alerted whenever I see anything involving sex trafficking or trafficking of children, right? If I see that word, I see that term, sometimes I don't think about my own experience with that near miss, but often it makes me take a moment to go, oh my gosh. So if you see something like that, like, I try to now, if I do see one of those headlines, to actually stop and go, that could have been you. That could have been you. That wasn't you. And it's suddenly like my problems of that day, my broken nail, or whatever the first class problem was, kind of melts away. And even if you've had trauma in your life and things were like, well, my whole life's been trauma, everything bad has happened to me, I don't have any mercies. There's some mercies in there. It might have been worse than it would have been had you not. You're like, no, Elle, it was awful. Right. But are there other mercies? There's other areas in your life where someone saved you, someone gave you a tip, someone prevented you. Maybe your own gut instinct prevented you. I've got another story that I tell. That happened to me, which was that I really, really so badly wanted to materialize. And I had intended a trip to the island of Molokai in Hawaii, an island that most people don't usually vacation at. It's kind of desolate. And it's known for having rough locals, like locals being like, hey, outsiders, not interested in your bullshit, right? Okay, so I was in Maui where my cousins live. This was many years ago. And they're like, hey, he had just bought a boat with another guy. They have two boats. His friend is a fisherman. He said, hey, we just bought this badass boat. So and so and his friends, who you know from the last time you were here, are all going to Molokai on a boat from Maui. And, they've got a chef, they're going to cook, they've got everything. And you should go. I mean, it's like an amazing opportunity. And I remember initially being like, oh my God, I can't believe I was basically just offered this free magical boat trip to Molokai. Rarely does that happen where you get to sail there from the other island, with maybe 10 other people. And I did know this crew because I had met them before. But here's the thing, something didn't feel right about it. And I had a few days to decide. And I'm driving them around Maui, and I'm looking out at Molokai as I'm driving around upcountry Maui, and I see Molokai, and I'm going, why don't I want to go on this fucking thing? Like something's telling me not to go. And look, I wrestled with it because I was like, my cousins are going to think I'm an idiot for not taking this awesome opportunity, right? Like someone's going to judge me for it. I know they're right or something like that was in my head. Like this has been on your freaking vision board sketchbook. Like you've wanted to do this and now the opportunity is here. Why are you not taking it? But I am so lucky that I went with my gut versus my attachment to the materialization of this intention. Like, I wanted to go to Maui forever. It's being offered to me. I'm going to fucking go. My gut was saying, don't go. And I remember being like, why don't I want to go? This is like a dream come true. I don't understand it. Either way, I followed my gut and I didn't go. So glad I fucking didn't. Because a week later, I went to go get a facial in town from a woman who happened to be on that boat trip. I didn't even know she was going on that boat trip, but I went in there and she said, weren't you supposed to come on that trip to Molokai with us? And I said, yeah. And she goes, oh my God, you are so lucky you didn't. It was a trip from hell. Okay. I'll just give you a little bit of a synopsis of it. First of all, the boat broke down at some point and it was treacherous seas and a lot of people got sick. So a lot of people were seasick. This woman who was giving me her facial did a dumb instinctual move. Her hat blew off the boat. She jumped in the water to get it. You don't do that in the channel between Maui and Molokai. It's one of the roughest, craziest channels ever. And so basically, she jumps off the boat. And within 2 seconds, that boat can be like a mile away. You know what I mean? So that was hell. And she's like in the water waiting for the boat to come back and get her. And she's just crying and it was a nightmare. Then the chef almost lost a fucking finger on an anchor mishap when they were trying to anchor. Then they get to Molokai, they're off of the shore, they anchor, they get the paddle boards out, and they put all of the food and all of the supplies and everything on the paddle boards, and they start to head towards the beach when three large Polynesian Samoan dudes with machetes said, you are not coming on this island. They weren't even allowed on the island. They never got to shore, and they ended up spending 48 hours on a boat with all of this treacherous shit. I still consider my decision not to go, my gut instinct, a mercy. When has your gut instinct saved your ass and given you a mercy? Because here's the thing. First of all, that would have been a cool trip if it worked out well. My gut said don't go. I'm really glad I didn't because that 48 hours, I had like what, 2, 3 days in Maui that were going to be wasted in the middle of the nowhere with all of this kind of drama. Yeah, not my jam. Instead, I enjoyed the island of Maui the way I want to, and I am so grateful that I didn't go. So, has there been a mercy created by you because of a gut instinct, a sixth sense about something? Remember that because that will also infuse your intuition with, hey, I got this. I can follow this. I will say this. Even though this podcast is about that, you follow your fucking gut at every turn. It's usually always right. In fact, I've never had my gut instinct be wrong. So, as I wrap up here, what are some things today, and it doesn't have to be the ultra traumatic things, but what are some things today that you can go, oof, dodged a bullet? Oof, dodged a bullet. What a mercy. Simmer with that and the gratitude in that. can really change your day around. Also, on the other side of this, just going through the Rolodex of what wonderful things have happened to you. That's always incredible. But sometimes these near misses can really drop us into gratitude. It's like that sex trafficking thing. Anytime I think about like, oh my God. Oh my God. All right, everyone. If you have a moment, please, and if you haven't, I would love you to write a review on Apple or Spotify podcasts. So appreciate it. Reach out to me anytime through my website, elle@elleruss.com. Hey, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this show, I would so appreciate you leaving a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And to learn more about partner discounts on amazing products, visit elleruss.com/discounts.